Panelo. Good evening po, and thank you for joining us in the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Good
Hi, good
evening.
evening, Attorney Sal. How are you?
Look,
Long
Lucci.
time, ah.
Yeah.
Well,
Ano
sir,
daw?
sir,
Parang
sir. Obviously,
ano yung
the palace thinks that VP Robredo is making it look like she was calling the shots while she was doing her relief efforts in Luzon, and this is what irritated the president. But she's also denying it. And can you tell us exactly what did she do that makes the palace think that she was trying to call the shots?
Well, you just read her statements. She has been releasing statements and making us believe that she is in control. She makes it
Yes, sir.
appear she's the only one working and distributing relief goods. And the president is just lying idle there.
Well, actually, sir, that's what we wanted to ask. Kasi that has been consistently what the palace officials have been saying. That's you and Secretary Roque, and as well the president. But can you be more specific? Kasi I went through the statements given by by VP Robredo, and so far what I've seen was she was announcing what she was doing, and she was saying that she was coordinating with local and military officials.
Like that for coordinating. What does she mean by coordinating?
Sir, for example, one of her messages or tweets, waiting for feedback, was assured marine rescue teams are on their way. As well, team able to get in touch with the PNP to Guerrero. We forwarded all the compiled requests and calls for help. These are examples.
Alam mo, what she did was like I think two of the generals made comment about her calling the military, whoever, and was asking, is there help on the way? And syempre, the response is, yes, ma'am. We've been doing that. Para
Yes, sir.
she's making it appear na she keeps on calling and directing operations, telling them, there is
Yes, sir.
there, you go there. Hindi naman ganun eh. Tanong niya
Yes, sir.
lang,
But isn't that what we expect our officials to do, both local and national, to at least coordinate and make sure that, that everything is in order, that all the information needed on the ground is relayed upstairs? I mean, you also expect local officials to do the same thing.
in the first place, you don't even have to do that because days prior to the typhoon or storm or whatever disaster that is expected to come, the help, the things that should be used during those crises are already in place. Dati nang nandun eh, meron tayong tinatawag na disaster risk reduction group to take care of that. Kumbaga, lahat ng mga sinasabi niya, andun na lahat yun.
Pero, sir,
Oh,
yung sa mga tweets naman niya, ang pinapublish lang naman niya yung mga relief goods na na-gather na nila, kung nasaan na sila. And I think that that's totally within her rights to show nga that her office is really also actively helping. But why is she now being targeted? Specifically, she's reacting to the news that you yourself have acknowledged, along with Secretary Lorenzana, to be false, no? Na she actually preloaded on the C-130. Can we talk about that? I mean, kasi yun ang talagang, that's what everybody now remembers as having been done by her, but now it appears hindi pala nangyari yun, no? Can you give your clarification on that? Where did you get that information?
But before that, you raised an issue na wala na siya sinasabi sa mga tweet niya. But you're forgetting that VP Leni has her spokesperson, right? And this spokesperson keeps releasing statements comparing the president with the vice president. Sinasabi niya na eto si Leni distributing relief goods while you are there, just in Malacanang. And then yung anak niya pa nag-text na tulog pa. Yung mga ganon, in addition dun sa mga lumalabas sa social media. So, hindi ba, may problema ka na doon. Pangalawa, you asked me about saan ba nanggaling yun? As I explained already, in fact, I texted her. But I understand she is saying na wala akong pinadala. But nandito sa message, she changed her number. That statement of mine, actually, it was not a statement. It was a reaction on a particular message I read on air between Casanova, former president of
Arnel, yes,
DDA,
DCDA.
and Secretary Delphine Lorenzana. Because Secretary Lorenzana was reacting on a post he made. Because sabi niya, we should help BP Leni because she needs support.
Mhm.
She has the mandate, especially because President Duterte has lost or is incapacitated or has no
Yes,
longer capacity to perform as
correct.
president. So nag-react si Secretary Delphine. Sabi niya, that's offensive. That's an insult to us. You make it appear na yan lang nagtatrabaho, kami wala. Tapos, he enumerated several steps, yung mga pinadala niya mga teams, mga helicopter, choppers, reliefs and everything. Ang haba-haba. Enumerate niya sa text. And then, sabi naman ng isa, but the VP Leni is distributing relief goods. Sabi naman ni Secretary Delphine, sabi niya, oh yes, sabi niya, she rode a C-130 going to Catandanes with those relief goods. So nung nabasa ko yun, nagulat ako kasi I've been praising BP Leni in my program. Sinasabi ko palagi na okay ang ginagawa mo. Ang ayaw ko lang, when you make it appear na parang ikaw lang nagtatrabaho. Yun ang ayaw ko. Pero pinupuri ko siya, keep on doing that. But sabi ko don't tell media what you're doing. Kasi kung talagang tumutulong ka, word spreads around fast. They will tell us kung anong ginagawa mo. Pupunta ka pa lang, may media ka na. Tapos papakita mo yung mga ginagawa mo. And then you make comments. Kung ano yung problema. Ganito, nagre-reklamo si ganito. Ganyan. Para bang walang ginagawa. How can she compete with the huge resources of the government? Ang dami-dami nang ginawa. And then, nung nag-comment ako, sabi ko, yan, lumalabas ng totoo. Kasi nung mabasa ko nga yan, sabi ko, all the while, I thought you went there on your own. Sabi ko, hindi pala. Para palang lalabas yan, ikaw pa nagdala ng relief goods. Yun ang statement ko. But, after my show, kasi I have another show doon sa DCRJ TV, may nag-text sa akin, sabi niya, may statement coming from the camp of Leni disputing your statement or your opinion or your description. Sabi ko, nakita ko, hinanap ko sa online news. So I called up and texted Secretary Lorenzana. Sabi ko sa kanya, Del, sabi ko, BP Leni is disputing that she rode in a C-130 plane. Sabi ko, can you kindly check the information given to you? So, sabi niya, okay. Yun ang binigay sa akin information. So, after a few minutes, nag-text back siya. Sabi niya, Sal, sorry. Sabi niya, it appears now that information was wrongly fed to me. O di sabi ko naman sa kanya, immediately, kasi nagpo-programa ako during the break, nung mabasa ko yung text niya na hindi pala totoo, nag-apologize kagad ako on air. Sabi ko, nagbigay ako ng background and then sinabi ko sa kanya, sa audience na, I'm sorry about this, pero nag-explain ako. And then after that, sabi ko during the break naman, tinawagan ko siya. Sabi ko, Del, can you please verify again? Ano ba talaga nangyari dito? So, after a while, he sent a report coming from PAF. Sinabi naman ng report, sabi niya, Sir, at no instance did VP Leni use an aircraft, so on. And then sabi niya, but sir, on November 3, 2020, sabi niya, UE chopper, sumakay doon yung mga relief goods ni VP Leni. So actually, it's not a false info. more, sa tingin ko, ang nangyari, parang siguro, sinabihan si Secretary Lorenzana na ginamit ni VP Leni yung aircraft, and dating sa kanya, ginamit, sumakay. Pero actually pala, relief goods ang ginamit.
Yes.
Hmm.
Okay.
In any
Sir,
case,
ako naman,
Secretary,
sir, ang tanong ko, sir, excuse lang. Sir, ito nga ang tanong ko. No? You're saying in effect that it's really not so much VP Leni that makes those comments as her PR people. So my question is, why would the president himself be reacting to statements made by the PR people of the vice president and on a nationally televised speech at the heels of a major calamity? Isn't that, a bit unpresidential, to say
No,
the least?
I beg to disagree, Luchi. You know why? Because yung PR na sinasabi mo is the official spokesperson of VP Leni. So, she is speaking for the principal. And VP Leni has not disputed any statement released by the spokesperson. O di
So you're talking about Attorney
position.
Barry
Well,
Gutierrez,
actually,
sir?
sir, I mean, let me clarify, sir. I mean, as far as that's concerned, VP Leni has categorically denied. Categorically, if anybody said that, the vice president has categorically said, I have nothing to do with nasaan ng Pangulo, the hashtag nasaan ng Pangulo. I will never do that. That is disputing it. In any case, sir, this is my question. And for the record, as you said kanina po, tama po yung sinabi nyo, Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, for the record, has not only taken back that story, he has apologized to Vice President Leni Robredo. But the other question on people's minds is, going to Luchi's point, nasa gitna tayo ng kalamidad, ang daming problema. Can't everything just be treated on good faith and at face value? I mean, you yourself said na parang bakit siya nakikipag-compete? Where is that coming from? Why can't people just help and let everybody help? And then that's what people are asking. Why does it have to come from a place of bad faith?
Okay, one, what you said that she categorically denied. She denied that she has nothing to do with the where are you, di ba? Yung hashtag.
Nasaan ang Pangulo?
But she has not disputed the statements made by the spokesperson.
Sir, Attorney
Hindi siya
Gutierrez,
nag-deny doon.
sir, an hour ago, Attorney Gutierrez denied that.
Another thing. Doon sa where are you, hindi naman yun question of concern about the health of the president. Kumusta si presidente? Yung question kantsaw yun nasaan ka ba? Matalang nandito si VP Leni, tatrabaho, ikaw naman, wala. Okay. Now, she reacted to my opinion based on a wrong info, which I thought was totally correct, but yung pala half correct lang. Hindi naman false dahil totoo naman na may ginamit Hindi nga lang siya. Hindi siya personal. Pero yung relief goods, hindi na doon. Sa kanya yon. Okay. Nagre-react siya doon kasi wrong. Di ba? Okay yon. So I apologize. But ang tanong ko naman sa kanya, if you're reacting to any wrong information, ba't naman hindi ka nag-react? Nung mabasa mo yung mga komentaryo about the president na walang ginagawa, nasa Malacanang na walang ginagawa, natutulog, whatever, maling information din yun, di ba? Dapat,
Yes, sir.
alam mo naman, he was attending
Granted,
the summit. Di ba? Merong ASEAN summit. And she
Yes, sir.
knew that. O bakit hindi siya nag-comment doon?
Yes, sir. Pero, sir,
si Presidente.
VP spokesman, sir, VP spokesman is now saying, at least an hour ago, he tweeted na he has nothing to do with yung nasaan ang Pangulo hashtag. And sabi nga niya, kung meron kayong ebidensya, meron kayong screen capture, go ahead and show it because I had nothing to do with it, sabi niya. So there's also a denial coming from her spokesman. So again po, we'll have to ask you that again.
Na natin.
Saan po galing? Ano po yung sinabi exactly?
Let us assume na wala siya kinalaman doon. Ang pinupunto natin dito is they use that hashtags. Ginamit nila yon against the president. Sinakyan nila. They were politicizing the distribution of relief goods.
Sorry, sir. When you say they, who are you referring to, sir? Who are you referring to?
Ano?
Who are you referring to when you say they? Sinakyan nila.
O, hindi, siyempre, yung kampo niya, yung kanyang
Yeah,
spokesperson.
but the next question,
Paano po?
sir, I mean, if
Pero
you're giving
nag-deny na nga daw, sir.
if you are acknowledging that, let's say hindi ginamit yung hashtag, and let's say and now you're saying you're giving it the benefit of doubt. Now, let's sabihin hindi nila ginamit. Then in what way are you saying na ginamit nila yung hashtag? In what way are you saying
O hindi
na
ba,
ginamit nila to politicize?
basahin mo yung statement ng spokesperson niya. Nakalagay doon na nagdi-distribute si VP Leni, pero nasaan si Presidente? Nandiyan lang sa Malacanang. Okay. Pinalalabas niya na walang ginagawa si Presidente. He was in attendance ng ASEAN Summit and then nagpaalam pa siya para lumipad at tingnan kung anong nangyayari doon sa mga nabaha. O, hindi ba?
Sir, could you cite the time or could you cite the date when that statement was made? Because that is being denied by the spokesman. I'm afraid lang po kasi it's being he said, she said. It's becoming a he said, she said.
Nasa dyaryo yun eh. Binasa ko pa nga kanina sa programa ko eh. I was reading his statement. And even reporters who interviewed me was reading that. Pinareact nga nila ako eh. Sir, ano masasabi niyo rito? Sabi ni ganito, ganyan. May VP Leni, di-dispute. Si Presidente, nandiyan lang sa Malacanang. So, yun ang nakakong problema eh. Yung spokesperson niya, hindi naman dinideny ni VP Leni yung mga sinasabi niya. Ibig sabihin, unang mo spokesperson ka nga. Hindi alam ng principal mo.
But again, I mean, sorry to belabor the point, sir, but I mean, just to hone in on something that you said, sabi nyo, nabasa nyo sa dyaryo. You didn't actually see this on the Twitter feed of the spokesperson
How's that?
of the Vice President.
Okay.
You didn't actually, if I understand you correctly, you said nabasa nyo sa dyaryo, nakita nyo sa isang news site.
I read it.
You didn't actually see it because I'm looking at the Twitter feed of the spokesperson right now, and frankly, I'm going back quite far off, and I am not seeing any kind of tweet to that effect. In fact, what he has been tweeting is yung mga message ni Vice President na saying na sa panahon ng matinding sakuna, dapat lahat tulong-tulong, lahat welcome. There is no contest whatsoever. So we just want to hone in on because you keep asserting that if it wasn't the Vice President, it was a spokesperson. But just going back to Ed's point, and just to clarify lang po, sir, you're citing something that you read in news site, but you did not actually see this on the tweet, as you said, of the spokesperson.
It was sent to me, apart from reading it in the news. That particular tweet or statement of the spokesperson was sent to me by one of the reporters.
Ako naman, sir, I really go back to, the fact that the president spent so much time on this issue in his televised speech. You were saying that you disagree that that's unpresidential. But, if you talk to anybody, whether it's people on the opposition side or even some of the supporters of President Duterte, the general impression is wag nang pag-aksayahan sana yung ganyang batuhan ng sisihan or whoever is giving the better relief. Don't you think that statements like those of the president actually really distract people from the main issue or the main resolution of an issue at hand, in this case a crisis? I mean, why is he wasting his time making statements inflammatory at that? That's really not going to help the situation any. In fact, it's several steps back, toward a resolution of what should be immediate relief of a situation.
First, I disagree with what you said na if you generally, yan ang comment ng tao. Iba ang nababasa kong mga pinapadala sa akin comment. Ang nababasa ko, huwag mo nang pansinin niya si VP Leni.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
Sinasabi mo,
Huwag nang pansinin. Kasi nga, pag-aaksaya ng panahon, di ba?
Kasi may sinabi ka kanina na ang general impression is mali yung sinabi ni Presidente.
No. It's not that. Ang general
Yeah.
impression is, bakit pinag-aaksayahan ng panahon, sir?
Bakit naman, ito, sige, sasagutin
Yeah.
kita. Bakit naman
Oo.
hindi mag-aaksaya pa na yun kung sinisiraan ka? You mean to tell me you deprive the President to respond back to anything said against him in his governance just because he's the President?
Yeah, but again, sir, I mean, sorry, we don't need to belabor this, but you keep saying it, and we just keep asking the question, what is your basis for saying na sinisiraan ng presidente? The last message that we got from Vice President Leni Robredo was basically saying, wag tayo magtulungan, magtulungan tayo, everything
I will
counts.
give you concrete examples. Remember, she made a press conference immediately after the SONA. Remember that? Natatanda mo ba yun na
Sir, this is pre-typhoon, sir. Sir, we're talking about entirely different things.
We're talking about the past week. We're talking about
No.
this period of calamity.
Konektado ito iyo. Konektado. In that press conference, she made certain proposals, 11 proposals. I remember that kasi I discussed that in my show. Lahat ng proposal niya, lahat ginagawa na ng gobyerno. That's why I said, you're making it appear na walang ginagawa gobyerno by suggesting these proposals na matagal nang ginawa at ginagawa at lagi ang ginagawa. Ibig sabihin, you're making it appear na walang ginagawa ang presidente kasi naglalabas ka ng mga suggestion. Maglalabas ka ng suggestion kung hindi pa nagagawa. So, that's one. And then, nagkaroon naman siya ng press conference, bigyan naman siya ng 3 proposal. Sinagot ko na naman siya, ayan na naman yung 3 proposal mo, yung sa quarantine, yung sa mga, ano ba yun? Basta 3 na sinabi ko, ginagawa na yan. Sabi ko, hindi ka kasi nakikinig sa programa ko. In fact, binasa ko pa yan news na yan, ganito, ganyan. Yung mga ganun kasi, pag ikaw yung nagsasuggest na gawin dapat ng gobyerno ito, ginagawa naman, naninira ka. You're making people believe, hearing you or reading whatever you say, na hindi ginagawa ng gobyerno yung mga minumungkahi mo.
Sir, teka, magandang usapan, pero dyan lang kayo, sir. Huwag kayong aalis, promise. Mag-gap lang kami, and then we'll get back to this very, very interesting discussion. Please stay with us.
All right.
We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to this very, very interesting conversation with Secretary Sal Panelo, who has been very gracious to guest here on the Chiefs. Alam nyo, sir, if I may, no, yung unang sabihin na natin, balikwas ni Presidente sa nasa ng Pangulo, hashtag na yan, nung sinabi niyang hayaan nyo na yung political punchline. I thought that was a gracious response, to be honest. I thought it was witty, and it set things aright in terms of where they should focus. So medyo nagulat ako sa balikwas niya kagabi na talagang tirade against the VP. Do you agree honestly with this line of speaking on national TV at the height of a calamity nga, sir? I mean, really, honestly, do you think this even does the president good, if that's the objective, which I guess it should be for
Yes.
the spokespeople and his consultants? Yeah.
Earlier, ano ito eh. Kaya nga, sinabi ko yung unang press con niya after the SONA and then yung sumunod na mga press conference niya. Para mapakita sa inyo na si Presidente, kahit akong nasa kalagayan niya, pinapakinggan ko yung mga mungkahi mo. Na sabi mo, ang gobyerno dapat gawin ito 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hanggang 11. So, kung ikaw ang Presidente rin, nakaupo ka, ginawa ko na lahat yan. Bakit sinasabi yan? That's one. Tapos nag-second conference ka. And then, eto ngayon, mababasa mo sa dyan, read it to you, para kasi sabi nyo, hindi nyo ito alam. Nandito, Philippine Star to, lawyer Barry Gutierrez, the Vice President's spokesperson, in the Vice President's weekly radio show, made a comparison of the country's two leaders, with Robredo leading her own office's response on the ground while Duterte remained in Malacanang. Isa yun. Tapos, marami pa mga sinasabi itong madalit sabi, they're making it appear nga na walang ginagawa si Presidente. Alam naman natin na he was in attendance ng ASEAN Summit and then lumipad siya. Sabi naman ng iba, pero yung paglipad niya, that was after. Sus Mariosep naman. Bakit naman hindi after? Alam nga naman kasagsagan, lilipad ka. Hindi nga mga take off ang aeroplano.
Kasalanan pala namin. Anyway, Secretary Panelo, nagsalita ng mahabang-mahaba kanina si VP Leni. Sabi niya, di daw dapat onion skin ng mga opisyal. Saka this is not the time nga daw. I'm just repeating all these arguments, no? During this crisis, it's not the time for political infighting. At dapat nga daw united yung response ng lahat ng government agencies, including, syempre, OVP, he's the second official of the land. Ano bang reaction ng Malacanang doon? Kasi nag-warning din si Presidente last night na kapag hindi daw tumigil yung ganyan baka she might have a nightmare if she runs and seeks to succeed him in 2022. Ano ba exactly sabi?
Mawawas-iwas daw. Oo.
Yung sinasabi niya na hindi dapat onion skin. Bakit siya? Para siyang onion skin. Gaya na sinabi ko, kung ikaw ang Presidente, magpe-press ko ng Vice Presidente mo, magbibigay sa iyo ng 11 proposals na matagal mo nang ginawa at ginagawa. Anong feeling mo? Sige nga. Hindi ba?
But that was before this that was before this crisis.
Pandemic nga yun. During the pandemic. That's what. Hindi ba? Nagpunta siya sa Catanduanes. Remember? Sabi niya, ito raw si Governor Cua, sinabi sa kanya na blindside sila kasi kulang ang impormasyon nila. And yet, nirefute ko siya the following day kasi may statement ni Governor Cua. Ang sabi ni Governor Cua, nagpapasalamat sila kay Presidente kasi tinulungan sila at nabigyan kagad ng mga impormasyon. In fact, they were prepared. Kasi sabi ni VP Leni, hindi raw sila prepared, sabi ni Governor Cua. Pero doon sa statement niya, they were prepared, kaya lang masyadong matindi yung baha ngayon. Okay, sabi ko, tingnan mo yan. I'm sure, sabi ko, since according to VP Leni, she was met by Governor Cua. Nagpapasalamat siya. Di nag-usap, siyempre nag-uusap sila. Siguro naman alam niya yung feeling ni Governor Cua na inilabas niya after umalis si VP Leni. Pero ibang sinasabi ni VP Leni, ibang sinasabi ni Governor Cua. Yung mga ganon, pag ikaw ang Presidente, nababasa mo na iba ang sinasabi mo at iba yung sinasabi naman ng gobernador. Hindi ba? At bakit? Iba yata.
Secretary, as a secretary, a real sincere question. what should be the modus vivendi between the Vice President and President Duterte? Because on the one hand, you've given her credit, as you said, na tumutulong yung tao. Purihin natin pagka tumutulong. On the other hand, you do have a president that seems to be very sensitive when she's getting some attention. But since you're going back in time, let's go all the way back to the original that she wasn't invited to the inauguration. She wasn't given a cabinet position. Nung binigyan siya ng pagkakataon to work for the anti-drug program, hindi tumagal ng 2 buwan, binawi na ulit because konting kibot, nag-iingay na naman yung mga kakampi, yung mga allies, ni supporters ni President Duterte, sinabi na bawat may gagawin, mapapil masyado. But at the same time, you wanna give room, as you said, for everybody to help. Pero kung bawat kibot mo, sasabihin mapapil ka, what should be the modus vivendi between the Vice President and the President?
Kasi bakit napapunta doon sa mapapel? Kasi palagi siyang nagpupunta sa media. Palagi siyang, bawat kilos niya, nandyan yung media. Sabi ko nga, you're doing good, people will talk about it. You don't even have, alam mo, there is a cabinet member. I'll tell you who this cabinet member is. This is distributing relief goods, receiving so many mga mass, packages, lahat. Pero dinidistribute niya. Walang media. Minsan, nagkaroon ng isang media, tinawagan siya, pwede ba sila namin yung hindi? In other words, ka dapat ganun ng estilo mo kasi yung mga taong nakakatanggap na sigurado ikikwento ka eh.
Pero
why would you say
Secretary, let me just
two different things.
Secretary, let me just
Kasi kanina, napanood ko siya sa TV na in-interview siya. Nagre-react nga siya dun sa sinasabi niya na yung not totally accurate information na sumakay. Sabi niya,
fake news nga daw.
hindi nga kami humingi ng tulong dyan sa gobyerno. And then, pinadala sa akin ni Secretary Delphine Lorenzana. Kasi sabi ko, Del, I need proof na ginamit yung chopper ng mga relief goods ni VP Leni. Kasi baka pag nagsalita na naman ako, hindi pala. So, nakita niyo yung logbook. Pinadala na ako ng screenshot. Pinadala ko kay Carmina. Pinadala ko rin kay VP Leni. Kasi nag-apologize ako sa kanya, hindi pinadala ko. Sabi ko, ginamit mo rin pala. So, hindi na naman totoo yung sinasabi niya na ginamit niya yung aeroplano. Na hindi naman masama yun. In fact, that will show na she's welcome. Hindi siya tinanggihan ng militar.
Secretary, just to clarify one point.
Lilinawin ko yun na kasi there's this impression among people na parang pinagkakait nyo yung resources ng gobyerno sa VP. Lalo na yung sa military. Siya yung sa UE helicopter military. Hindi ba pwedeng gawin yun? She's the number 2 official of the land. She doesn't have to coordinate with Malacanang, di ba?
Hindi nga pinagkakait eh. Kaya nga tinanggap kagad nung nakiusap yung, siguro staff niyang nakiusap. Kaya nakita ko sa logbook na care of BP Leni, mga relief goods, mga 90 packages, weighing 2,000 plus pounds. In fact nga, that will show nga na welcome siya. And for that matter, anybody who helps, whether kalabang ka sa politika o hindi, basta tumutulong ka, okay yan sa gobyerno.
So okay lang sa kanya yan. Even if she joined that helicopter trip, okay lang yon. As far as Malacanang is concerned.
Okay yun. Ang problema nga lang,
siya.
ang problema kasi nga, pag ginamit mo na yung, ginagamit mo yung gobyerno, tapos meron ka pang mga parinig, mga pasaring na tumanggap ako ng ganito, maraming kailangan tulong doon, hindi pa dumarating. Ano yung mga ganon? Alam mo naman na ang gobyerno talagang nagre-respond days before pa, naka-ready na, naka-standby na. Yung DPWS, standby na yung mga heavy equipment pala. Yung mga yung si Secretary Rolly Bautista, yung factory, yung food packages, naka-ready na lahat. Lahat yan naka-standby na eh.
Yeah,
Secretary Panelo. Brings me to my first question.
Natural lamang na kung ikaw ay pumupunta sa isang lugar, meron kang matatanggap na, ma'am, kulang yung aming dumating dito, ganito. But it doesn't mean na walang ginagawa gobyerno. Hindi mo na kailangan isumbong yan kasi ang dating, parang walang ginagawa gobyerno. Dapat doon, ang sagot mo, hayaan nyo, darating mo yan. Siguro na antala lang. Hindi yung Sasabihin mo sa
Kaya nga,
media.
sir, babalik ako dun sa kayo na rin na nagsabi, kahit kanyo, sinasabi sa presidente, wag niyo nang pansinin yun, wag niyo nang pansinin yun. Ako rin, yun din ang tanong ko, bakit ba kasi pinapansin pa ng Pangulo yun? Bakit kailangan pagtuunan ng pansin yun at gatungan pa ng kung ano-ano, sir, no? And naroroon na rin ako, sir, marami rin talagang bumabati ko sa presidente dahil, halimbawa, how do you justify naman the sex jokes also on national TV, no? Paano mo ba ang usapan ninyo dyan? I mean, you have been spokesperson at one point, no? How do you process a reaction like that? And it's a natural reaction, no? This is the president of the Philippines, and he's making sex jokes in a very serious forum where we're supposed to be talking about how to give help where help is needed. I mean, sir, how do you handle a situation like that, really? How do you feel about that?
Ang sinasabi mo sex joke, yung in reference dun sa classmate niya, dun sa during
Yes,
the situation.
yes, it was,
Lucci
yes, and it was in a,
Lucci.
yeah.
Si presidente, mula nung naging presidente, yun ang estilo. Hindi ba? For every speech niya, either meron siyang binabanatan o nagbibiro siya. Ganun yung style niya, nagpapatawa.
Secretary, I won't ask about the jokes, but I will ask about the innuendo. And this was not in the context of the joke of a friend.
Anong innuendo?
This was in the context of this was in the context of threatening the vice president. Nung sinabi niya na if you have ambitions, your reputation will be ano. And then this is innuendo. Certainly, I will say that this is how it came to me. It's innuendo. It's misogynistic innuendo. When the president says, ikaw, saan ka umuuwi? Ba't ka ginagabi? Saan ka nagtatagal na bahay? That's innuendo. So, and so I won't even go to the...
Yan ang dating sa'yo. Kasi binibigyan mo ng malisyosong...
So, sir, ano ibig sabihin nun?
Ano ibig sabihin nun?
Kasi sinasabi ni Presidente, sa gabi, ako nagtatrabaho. Hindi ako natutulog eh. Hindi ba? Night person nga siya. Kaya tinatanong ikaw, anong ginagawa mo? Anong oras ka?
No.
Kasi sabi mo,
Sir, ang sabi po niya, iba-ibang bahay ang inuuwian niya.
Hindi lang yan. The context for that was precisely within the statement of the president na kung ikaw may ambisyon, you will regret it. Sisirain ko ang reputation mo, wawaswasan kita, at tatanungin ko among other things. For example, saan ka umuwi? Pagka ginagabi, saan ka nagtatagal? That was not, the context was not, I'm working, what are you doing until late at night?
Yung statement na yon, you can put meanings to it. Kung ano man ang para sa inyo, conveniente sa inyo o makakabuti sa inyong whatever. Kanya-kanya, sa akin, ang impression ko iba. Kasi nga, she keeps on saying na she has been distributing goods, hindi na siya natutulog, gabing-gabi na, nagpupuyat. Kaya sa akin, nung sinabi ni Presidente yon, parang kinukumpare niya, ako nagtatrabaho ako, gabi-gabi, ikaw.
Sir, I'm sorry, that's quite a stretch. Ito po ang sinabi ng Pangulo. Ikaw, noong gabi, anong oras ka uuwi? Isang bahay ka lang ba? Dalawang bahay? Nagtatanong lang ako kay congressman ka? Kaninong bahay ka natagalan? That does not sound like what you're saying right now. I'm sorry, but that certainly does not sound like what you're saying right now. Unless that's an entirely different spin you're trying to put on us.
Yung sinasabi mong bahay ng congressman, hindi ko alam yung tungkol doon sa bahay ng congressman. Baka ikaw may alam. Tell me.
Wala naman nga kami binabanggit.
That's why I'm asking you kasi you're trying to put the context na he's only asking if the vice president is busy with doing other jobs. Now we're talking about something else altogether na ako yung... So really, what does this mean? Tell us.
Teka muna. Kung nagdi-distribute ka ng relief goods, bago ka maka-distribute ng relief goods, kailangan mo ng mga donors, hindi ba?
So it comes from the congressman.
Kailangan magtrabaho ka rin. Either pupuntahan mo yung mga kaibigan mo, whether congressman yan, senador yan, mayaman yan, bilyonaryo yan. Siyempre, kailangan mo silang kausapin. Either ka sa telepono o pupuntahan mo sa bahay. Hindi ba? Kung baga, nangangalap ka ng mga relief goods eh.
Sir, yun po ang ibig niya sabihin doon. Yun ang ibig sabihin.
Pag binigyan mo ng malisyosong meaning, talagang makakahanap ka ng lahat na
No,
uri na.
but why do you even question that if that's the intent and you're just trying to gather donations? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Why do you even challenge her to answer
Ang
that?
sinasabi ko
I
lang,
mean, if I went by your argument that that's the context in which the president actually said that, diba? What's wrong with...
Sir, I'll be frank with you, sir. It does sound like you're just pulling our legs here. That does not sound like the context of the president here.
Sandali muna,
I mean,
sandali.
that sounds like it's pretty
Sandali
far
na.
out.
It's not, I'm not saying that's the context of what the president said. What I said to you is that was my impression. Kuha mo, yun ang tingin ko dun sa kanyang sinabi. In relation dun sa trabaho niya at sa trabaho ni VP Leni at sa mga statements niyang nagpupuyat siya, gabi, naghahanda ng mga relief goods. Sa akin lang yun.
Well, kaya nga, sir,
sincerely, sir,
babalik
that
nga
was your
ako
impression.
doon. Yeah.
Hindi niya
But that's why ako bumabalik nga ako doon, sir, sa surely you know that that's not the impression that most people will get out of a statement like that. So I'm just wondering why you...
Luchi, speculation yung sa'yo eh. You're speculating. All of you are speculating.
So we're basing it on the statement of the president. He prefaced it and he followed through on it in the context of, I will ruin your reputation. That was the president's context, quite explicitly. No working around that. The context was very clear. You will regret it. He said, this will be your nightmare.
Kaya mo na, sa totoo lang, kung tutuusin, hindi natin alam exactly kung anong di ba? Pero ako, since kasi ako as a lawyer, binibase ko yung kung ano yung impression ko sa isang tao in relation to another. Kaya yan ang impression na he was referring doon sa trabaho niya sa mga relief goods. Kasi nga, yun ang pagkakilala ko kay VP Leni. At yun ang mga sinasabi niya kasi. Tapos ito naman si Presidente, sinasabing hindi siya natutulog. Nagtatrabaho siya ng gabi. Totoo naman pati. O, yun. Pero sa totoo lang, wala tayong alam exactly kung ano niyang ibig sabihin. If we will be speculating, dun lang tayo, speculation.
Siguro, kailangan tanungin natin si Presidente mismo exactly what it means. Kumiinip po yung ating usapan. But unfortunately, Secretary, we've run out of time. We'd like to thank you.
Salamat, sir. Salamat, sir.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you for joining the Chiefs. At lilipat po tayo we'd like to welcome our next guest. Nasa crisis pa rin po tayo. We'd like to welcome the head of Greenpeace Philippines, Director Leia Guerrero. Welcome po, Director Miss Guerrero.
Good evening. Thanks for having me in your show.
Medyo masalimuot pa rin yung topic natin ngayon. But we'd like to know more about the proposal of Greenpeace, to declare a national climate emergency. Kasi-declare po lang ngayon ng Luzon-wide state of emergency. Ano po ba yung ibig sabihin ng national climate emergency? What does it entail? Ano po yung mga gusto nyo mangyari under that situation?
Mm-hmm. So, ang hinihingi namin sa gobyerno ngayon ay mag-declare sila ng isang climate emergency declaration. We think this is very urgent. A climate emergency declaration is actually, it declares the climate crisis as the foremost national priority and puts a climate lens sa lahat ng policy and decision-making and implementation ng isang bansa. So around the world, may several countries na nag-declare ng climate emergency declaration. At dito mismo sa Pilipinas, meron tayong at least 3 provinces, yung councils ng provinces na yun, at ng municipalities, na nag-declare na gaya ng sa Bacolod, sa Tolosa, sa Leyte, tsaka sa Cebu. So ang hinihingi namin ay kailangan maging top priority, kailangan maging policy of the state, yung foremost na policy ng state, ang pag-address ng climate crisis. At tingin namin ay isang mekanismo kung paano ito magyayari ay ang pag-declare ng Pilipinas ng climate emergency.
Ma'am, you mentioned the 3 countries, Kanyo, who's tried this this paradigm and this approach. What does it entail in those three countries at least? I mean, what did declaring this emergency climate situation, what did it entail? What actions did it lead to?
So dito sa Philippines, we have three jurisdictions, so Bacolod, Tolosa, and Cebu City Councils that have declared a national climate emergency. So part of what they've committed to is to put climate action at the center of yung policy making nila as a city or as a municipality. In other countries, for example, that have declared climate emergency, for example, Bangladesh was one of the first to have declared a climate emergency declaration. They called it a planetary emergency declaration. It's the same kind of spirit na gawing priority ng isang bansa, ng isang gobyerno, ang pag gumagawa ng mga polisiya, pag nag-i-implement ng mga projects, pag gumagawa ng plans, etc., nilalagay nila ang parang may climate lens parate yung kanilang perspective. So for example, sa atin, ano ibig sabihin ng putting climate action as a central policy of the state? For example, right now, 'di ba, meron tayong COVID pandemic. And there has been a lot of effort from the government to look at COVID recovery. But the COVID recovery plans that we have right now, did it build in climate action into the COVID recovery plans? What we're asking for, a lot of environmental groups are asking, is that when the government plans yung COVID recovery natin, economic recovery, tsaka yung recovery ng mga after the pandemic, we want to see climate actions like yung energy transition, yung iplano na mag-phase out na ng coal, bring in more renewable energy, etc., into that recovery. Kasi it's also yung long-term ang tinitingnan natin in terms of addressing both the COVID and the climate crisis. So basically, that's what it means. It means putting in that climate lens, putting in climate action as the number one priority ng isang bansa. And we think that sa Pilipinas, napaka-importante nun kasi, di ba, isa nga tayo sa mga pinaka nasasalanta ng climate emergency.
I'm trying to imagine po how this can be operationalized after declaration of a national climate emergency. How this can be operationalized so that it's not just lip service on the part of government. Kasi relatively madaling mag-declare ng ganyan ng gobyerno, pero and then it falls back to so what happens next? Di ba? Baka mamaya magkasundo lahat na it's an emergency, tapos nagkalimutan na rin. So what would you need? Would laws be needed here? What else would be needed here to make sure that it does push forward?
It's a combination of a lot of things. So when siguro look at it as a strategy, as a coherent strategy that pulls everything together from the lens of climate and climate justice. So sa amin, for Greenpeace, what a climate emergency declaration means to us is that when the government declares a climate emergency, it must also hold those most responsible for the climate crisis accountable. So, sino itong mga responsible? Yung sinabi nga, nasabi na rin to ni Duterte sa isang speech niya, yung industrialized nations who are most responsible must be held accountable. For us, it's also fossil fuel companies. So, we feel that the government must hold these companies and these countries accountable for the climate crisis. Tapos, it should enjoin a whole of government and whole of society approach to strengthen yung climate response. So, it doesn't only mean, for example, ngayon, diba, tinitingnan natin yung Department of Disaster Resilience. Gusto magtayo ng gobyerno ng ganon. Nagbubuo sila ng task force for disaster resilience. So, operationally, what would a climate emergency declaration mean to that sort of establishing a disaster resilience department, etc.? For us, what it means is that when we look at crises, lalo na yung mga climate-related crises, dapat we look not just on the response, not just on yung disasters, kasi yung focus niya disaster lang di ba? So mag-focus dapat siya sa mga policies that strengthen yung building resilience to future crises, including the climate crisis. So, for example, what are these policies? So it means strengthening environmental regulations and environmental laws. That should be part of a climate strategy of a country. For example, yung diba, yung nakikita natin ng mga baha ngayon sa Cagayan, naging cause yan, logging, erosion ng mga mountainsides, etc. Strengthening yung mga biodiversity laws, for example, protecting our oceans, which will be most impacted also by warming when that happens, and it protects livelihoods.
As you said, ma'am, all of these, of course, are long-term concerns, and really to invest and to see everything in place, it takes a long time. But how do you square that with the immediate and the short-term realities, particularly the climate emergency, which nobody will deny, with the very real economic and socio-economic emergency right now, where in the short term, people just need to survive?
In terms of parang operationalizing it in a context na ganito, kunwari pandemic, 'di ba? And people need to survive kasi ang daming nawala ng trabaho, etc. Like what I said earlier, we feel that the strategies need to be integrated into the COVID recovery. So for us, it means planning for green jobs, 'di ba? Not putting in more climate action sa mga policies, for example, ng DOE, etc. So, I don't know if I answered your question, sir?
Yeah, but Robbie, but that's ano lang yung question. For example, of course, energy. No, I mean, we know where you stand on coal. But right now, those are the power plants that we have. Right now it's the cheapest and most accessible source of energy for us. I mean, does it come with just I don't know a pragmatism that look, right now we need to get our factories back online. People need to get some economic activity going. I mean, nobody will dispute, as I said, this long-term campaign for let's start shifting to greener energy. But can you square what we need in the meantime, in the short term? Na this is something that will have to happen. That the economic activity has to come back online first.
Yeah, the economic activity has to come online, pero it has to consider the long-term consequences and long-term impacts of what we're doing right now. So, for example, if you say, diba, na parang factories have to go back online, coal is not the cheapest electricity, actually. Right now, solar is cheaper than coal, as that's one of the latest developments, RE. What we need to do is, at the present, already plan for that future possibility. Because if we go back during this pandemic, if we go back to how things were before, yung ating back to normal, di ba? Kaya nga sa amin sa Greenpeace, ang sinasabi namin, kailangan, pag nagplano tayo ngayon, we go to a better normal. We don't go back to coal, back to polluting industries, etc. Kasi all this, when we kind of shift systems to make sure that we emerge from this recovery, na iba na yung ating outlook, iba na yung ating direksyon. Makita natin na yung gusto nating puntahan na direksyon, ayun yung parang mas magiging resilient tayo sa future crises, future pandemics. Tsaka sa climate crisis.
If you can illustrate, do you have a country model, developing country model, na in dealing with climate change, para you can cite an example of a policy that has worked for this developing country and it has improved the situation in their lives?
Siguro, what I could cite is not necessarily, parang climate policy or so. more yung policy of taking care of nature, putting nature first before yung profit or parang business considerations. So there are countries that are operating like that. For example, Bhutan, diba, yung measurement nila ng economics nila is gross national happiness, etc. It seems, I mean, for a lot of us, it seems like parang an ideal or a dream. Pero sa amin, we know that this is something that needs to happen. Kasi parang if we refuse to see na parang there is a better way for us, there is a better path for us, hindi na tayo makakaahon sa parang repeated na pagsalanta ng mga parang climate impact sa atin. So ang punto kasi namin in proposing climate emergency declaration is really about future-proofing a country against the effects of the climate crisis. And it's something that we should have done a long time ago, especially as one of the most parang impacted na countries, diba? So parang if we don't plan that now, if we take into consideration yung mga inuna natin yung mga short term before looking at the long term, hindi tayo makakaahon sa cycle na every time na lang na merong bagyo, ang na lang natin, ang magagawa na lang natin yung magbibilang tayo ng mga kung ano yung namatay, ano yung mga na-damage, etc. So, from that perspective, parang ang kailangan mo talaga ng parang mas long-term na planning, hindi yung pang ngayon lang. Yeah.
I just hope that that's not going to result in another task force or another department or another bureau or anything at all that will add to the fattening of this already fat organization. That's called the government.
From our side,
sa mga ganyan, di ba? So you come up with a declaration, if it's in the form of a law, nako, task force na naman yan, or department, and it's a new budgeting effort again. So
and that's not the proposal. It's not. We're not asking for a task force. What we're asking is for a direction. What we're asking is for focus on addressing the climate crisis. If you look at how for example, how we're responding to the recent spate of typhoons that are happening, makikita, diba, parang yung task force na Build Back Better task force, yung plano for Department of Disaster Resilience, it's all parang end of the line yung tinitingnan nila. It's how to respond to a disaster, how to prepare for a disaster. Pero how do we, when you talk about, building, putting climate at the center of policy making, then it's about building yung resilience for communities through strengthening existing environmental laws, through making sure that you put a climate lens when you approve projects, when you look at new laws and policies. Talagang climate yung tinitingnan mo. When you look at business, your policies as a government on business, will you magagawa ka ng bagong laws to make sure that they are climate responsive, mag-report sila ng kanilang transparency in terms of climate footprint, etc. So parang binibuild din mo yung climate response into all the policies sa gobyerno. And in that way, you're strengthening how a country can respond to the climate crisis. Tapos, yung isa pang factor na parang mas fundamental dito sa parang it's coherent na strategy on the climate crisis. One fundamental factor is making sure that we do hold those most responsible for the climate crisis accountable. Kasi parang if we don't address that, the root cause of the climate crisis, then we'll be stuck in in disaster preparedness, disaster response na cycle where we are right now. So we really do need to kind of build in climate crisis response, climate action into policies, and we do need to hold those most responsible corporations, fossil fuel and cement corporations, as well as industrialized nations accountable for the climate crisis.
Okay.
All right.
Miss Leah Guerrero, the country director of Greenpeace Philippines. Ma'am, thank you po for joining us tonight.
Thank you also.
Salamat.
Good night.
Good night. And that was another chill edition of the Chiefs.
Puro bad news. At least may pangalawa ng vaccine, 94.5% effective.
95%.
95 na nga ang Pfizer.
Pfizer nga, naging mas
So,
effective
Moderna, so Pfizer claimed 90% last week,
Yes.
and then pinaasan ng Russia, di ba? Sabi ng Russia, 92 kami.
Oh,
Di
hindi,
ba?
ganito nga eh.
Tapos
Parang
Moderna,
Pfizer, 90, Sputnik 5, 92, Moderna, 94.5. Pfizer ulit,
So, Pfizer
95.
95.
Yung Sputnik 5, magiging 96. Tapos,
Malapit na,
yung
malapit na.
Moderna, magiging 98.
Pero mas mura yung Moderna, saka walang super cold storage.
Oh, yes. The
Minus
storage
20 lang.
is minus 20 lang versus minus 80. So, hopefully, that's a
Well,
good ano.
yung Sputnik is in powder form. So ihahalo mo lang siya sa solution. So you can basically just lug it around.
So, hindi kailangan ng ref. Hindi kailangan ng
powdered
ref.
milk. Parang powdered milk. Kasi solution and the
Baka
powder.
inumin
So,
yan, ha?
Well, at least may magandang development.
diba, leave it to the Russians to come up with something like that.
Okay.
So, yun. Malisyoso lang kasi kayo.
Hindi.
Okay.
Okay. We're going over time, so let's leave it at that. That'll be all for this. I remember the ending. That'll be all for this Wednesday edition of the Chiefs. We hope to discuss it. We'll keep the conversation going. I'm Edling Gaupa News.
I'm Ami Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News.